I got there at 9. My name wasn't called. I went to the reception desk at 9:43 and asked how much longer. The woman looked at her screen and told me I wasn't in the system. No record, no appointment, no check-in. I went back to my seat. I looked at the clock on the wall above the reception desk. 9:47. I looked at my phone. 9:47. 5 minutes passed. I looked at the clock again. 9:47. The second hand was moving. Steady, continuous, the way it always moves. But the time wasn't changing. I watched it for a full minute. The second hand completed its full rotation. The minute hand didn't move. 9:47. The clock was stopped, but the second hand didn't know. It was a Tuesday in late October. The appointment had been scheduled 6 weeks earlier, a routine follow-up, the kind that exists to confirm that nothing is wrong rather than to find it. My doctor's office was attached to a mid-sized hospital west side of the city. I had been there twice before, parked in the same lot both times, knew which entrance to use. I left home at 8:30. Traffic was lighter than expected. I stopped at a coffee place 2 blocks from the hospital, got a flat white, drank half of it standing at the counter. The morning was cold and clear, the kind of autumn day that looks warmer than it is. Bright light, sharp shadows, a wind that finds the gap between your collar and neck. I parked at 8:55, walked through the main entrance. The lobby was the standard kind, polished floor, reception desk, a wall-mounted directory, chairs along the side wall for people who were already waiting or didn't know where to go. I followed the signs to the outpatient wing, third corridor on the left, then right, then through a set of double doors that opened automatically as I approached. The waiting room was a medium-sized rectangular space. Pale walls, fluorescent lighting, the kind that doesn't flicker but doesn't feel fully natural. 2 rows of plastic chairs facing each other across a low table with magazines on it. A water cooler in the corner. A reception window at the far end, frosted glass. A sliding panel for speaking through. There were maybe 8 or 9 people already there when I arrived. The usual spread, older man with a cane, a woman with a child on her lap, a couple sitting close together not speaking, a few individuals looking at their phones or staring at nothing. The ordinary quiet of a medical waiting. Nobody makes eye contact. Nobody talks unless they know each other. Everyone is somewhere between mildly anxious and completely numb. I checked in at the reception window. A woman in her 40s, dark hair pulled back, glasses on a lanyard. She found my name, confirmed the appointment, handed me a small numbered card. 7. She said the doctor was running about 15 minutes behind. I said that was fine. I sat in the second row, third seat from the left. I put my jacket over my knees. I looked at my phone for a while, emails, the news, nothing that required attention. I watched the door to the consultation rooms open and close a few times. Names were called. People stood up, disappeared through the door, came back or didn't. I finished the mental arithmetic of the wait, 15 minutes behind, maybe 20. I'd be out by 10:30 at the latest. I had a lunch meeting at 1. Plenty of time. The water cooler made it sound every few minutes. The fluorescent lights hummed at a frequency just below conscious notice. Someone coughed once and didn't again. A child asked something in a low voice and was answered in a lower one. Ordinary. Completely ordinary. I looked at the clock above the reception window. 9:21. I put my phone away and waited. The first hour passed normal. Names were called. The room emptied slightly and then filled again as new people arrived. I watched the consultation door. I watched the reception window. I waited for my name or my number. Neither came. By 10:30, I was the longest sitting person in the room. I had watched at least 12 people come and go. I checked my numbered card. Still 7. I looked at the reception window. The woman behind it was on the phone, not looking out. I told myself the doctor was running further behind than expected. It happened. I'd been in waiting before. By 11 o'clock, I was aware that something was wrong. Not dramatically wrong. Just a low-grade wrongness of a situation that has gone past the point where patience is a reasonable explanation. I had been there for 2 hours. I had not been called. The room had cycled through several complete sets of patients. I was still sitting in the same chair. I went to the reception window. The woman looked up. I gave her my number card and told her I had been waiting since 9. She took the card, looked at it, then turned to her screen. Her expression didn't change, exactly, but something in it shifted, a slight pause. The kind that happens when something doesn't match. She said she couldn't find my check-in record. I told her I had checked in at 9. She had handed me the card herself. She looked at the card again, then back at her screen. She said the card number didn't correspond to any active record for today. She said she didn't have a record of my appointment at all. I told her my name. She typed it. She shook her head. I told her my doctor's name. She checked. She said the doctor had no appointments listed under my name for today or any recent date. I stood at the window for a moment. Then I took out my phone and found the appointment confirmation email. I held it up to the glass. She leaned forward to read it. She said the format was unusual. She said their system had updated 2 years ago and the confirmation layout looked like the old version. She said she wasn't sure where it had come from, but it didn't match anything in their current records. I looked at the email. I had received it 6 weeks ago. I had the original in my inbox with the timestamp. Everything looked normal to me. She said she was sorry. She said she could try to fit me in as a walk-in if I wanted to wait, but there was no guarantee of timing. I said I would wait. I went back to my seat. I sat down and looked at the room. It had changed while I was at the window, or I was noticing it differently now. The people in the chairs, there were 11 of them, I counted, were all sitting very still. Not the normal stillness of people waiting. Something more complete than that. The woman with the magazine hadn't turned a page in the time I had been watching. The man by the water cooler had his cup raised halfway to his mouth and hadn't moved. The couple I had noticed earlier were in the same position, same angle, same distance, but nobody was looking at their phone. Nobody was shifting in their seat. I watched for 2 full minutes. Nothing moved. I looked at the child who had been on the woman's lap earlier. She was still there, head tilted slightly to one side, eyes open, not blinking. I looked at the man with the cup. His hand was steady, perfectly steady, not the micro-tremor of a hand that is holding something and waiting to drink, just still. I looked at the woman with the magazine. Her chest was not moving. I checked the other, one by one, looking for the rise and fall of breathing, the small inevitable movement of a living body drawing air. 11 people. Not one of them was breathing. I stood up. The fluorescent lights hummed. The water cooler made its sound. From behind the consultation door came the muffled, ordinary sounds of a medical office, a voice, the roll of a chair, the click of a keyboard. Everything normal except the 11 people sitting in front of me. I walked to the double doors I had come through. I pushed. They opened. The corridor beyond was empty and bright and completely normal. I walked through it quickly, not running, the way you move when you're not ready to admit that running is necessary. I passed a nurse coming the other way. She moved aside without looking at me. I kept walking. At the end of the corridor, I pushed through another set of doors into the main lobby. Polished floor, reception desk, wall-mounted directory. 2 people sitting along the side wall, both on their phones, both moving, both present. I walked out through the main entrance into the cold October air. I stood on the pavement for a long time. I called my doctor's office from the car park, not the hospital main line, the direct number for the practice attached to it, the one I had in my phone from when I'd been a patient 3 years. The receptionist answered. I gave my name. She found me immediately. She said my appointment had been that morning at 9. She said I had not checked in. She said the doctor had waited and then marked me as a no-show. I told her I had been in the waiting room for over 2 hours. She said the waiting room record showed no check-in under my name. I told her about the card, the woman at the window, the confirmation email. She said she would look into it and call me back. She didn't. I drove home. I sat at my kitchen table for a long time. I thought about the 11 people, the stillness, the breathing. I thought about the way the child's eyes had been open and not blinking. I thought about the woman's magazine, suspended mid-turn. I tried to construct an explanation. Mass stillness in a waiting room. People absorbed in thought, in tiredness, in the particular suspended state that waiting produces. It was possible. It was not impossible. But the breathing, you cannot will yourself to stop noticing whether people are breathing once the question has been raised. I had looked carefully. I had given it time. I had checked 11 people. I rescheduled the appointment. Different day, early morning. I drove there, parked, walked in, checked in at the window. Different woman this time, younger, efficient. She found my name immediately, handed me a card. 8. I sat in the waiting room. I looked at the clock. 8:54. I watched the other people in the room. A man reading a folded newspaper. An older woman with a shopping bag at her feet. A teenager with headphones half on. All of them moving. Small shifts, small movements. Breath visible in the slight rise of shoulders. The occasional sigh. My name was called at 9:20. The appointment lasted 12 minutes. Everything fine, routine, just as it was always going to be. I walked back through the waiting room on the way out. I stopped at the door. I turned and looked at it. The chairs, the low table with the magazines, the water cooler, the clock above the reception window. Normal. All of it normal. I stood there for a moment longer than I needed to. Then I left. I haven't been back to that building since. The follow-up appointments I've rescheduled to a different practice across the city. Longer drive, less convenient. My doctor asked why I switched. I said the parking was easier on that side of town. She accepted that. Some things you don't explain, not because there's nothing to say, because saying it means deciding what it was. And I'm not ready to do that. The clock said 9:47. The second hand was moving. I've thought about that more than anything else. A stopped clock with a moving second hand. Something that keeps going through the motions of time without actually moving through it. I know what that image makes me think of. I'm not going to say it out loud.